Mark had been burned before, manipulated into trades, overhyped deals, shady sellers and scammers. He approached every interaction with suspicion. But then, at a card show, a collector handed him a Steph Curry golf card and said, "Take it. I know you love these." Mark froze. He said, "What?" And the stranger said, "Aren't you that guy that collects golf cards? I heard you talking with another vendor that you used to open basketball cards in your high school social studies class out of boredom." I was laughing to myself when you said that because I could really relate. I hated social studies. And I was just about crying of laughter to myself when you said you pulled a card of some baby-faced kid that would never make it in the NBA, who turned out to be Steph Curry, the greatest shooter of all time. Here, take the card. It's perfect for you. No catch, no scam, just a genuine act of kindness. Mark realized he had been so guarded that he had forgotten one thing. People in this hobby love the hobby. Sure, caution and skepticism are wise in some situations, but assuming the best in people made collecting a lot more enjoyable.
Ridiculous, Fondling Cardboard!
What is up? And welcome to Fondling Cardboard. I'm your host, Mike Lakusta, aka the Golf Card Collector. This is the 12 Rules for Hobby series, where I take the powerful lessons from Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life and break them down, helping you become a better collector and, more importantly, a better version of yourself, both in the hobby and in life. Well, folks, we made it. We made it to the final rule of the series. Yesterday, in Rule 11, we talked about setting your house in order before criticizing the world. And today is Rule number 12. Assume the best of people. And I saved this final rule, best for last. No, I didn't actually save it. Obviously, this is in the order that Jordan Peterson wrote it in his book. But I'm glad he put this one for last because it's the rule that I need to work on the most. I can tend to be a bit of a skeptic, a bit of a cynic in some respects. And I've heard somebody say that those who are skeptical or cynical tend to be the most intelligent people, or maybe I'm just remembering it that way for wishful thinking. But it does open the door for the concept of the more you learn about a particular subject, the more humility that you develop towards it. The more you realize how much you don't know about a particular topic. And so if there are any subject matter experts listening to this podcast in any domain, be wary. Be wary that as you develop knowledge and expertise in a subject matter and you realize how much unknown there is, don't allow you to develop this jaded personality. And don't allow yourself to become cynical about somebody's intentions when they talk about that particular domain. Because for you, it's easy to sit and pick apart a bunch of holes into what somebody's saying and read into it and read what's coming behind their words and how it could be misconstrued. On the flip side, if you don't know much about a particular topic, it's also easy to become paranoid and fearful about what somebody else is going to do or is thinking or how they might be manipulating you. I mean, if you took that to extreme, a lot of conspiracy theorists barely know how things truly work. They develop these storylines about how they're happening. And that assumption of the worst of other people carries over into many other aspects in their life. And so what I'm doing by illustrating both extremes here is that anyone can fall into the trap of assuming the worst in people. So whatever walk of life, just try to give others the benefit of the doubt. It just leads to better relationships, fewer conflicts. And in card collecting, not everyone is out to scam you. While caution is necessary, approach deals with optimism and fairness and enthusiasm about the cards themselves. And that's how you'll enjoy the hobby. And not just for yourself, but you'll also create a positive experience for the other person. Assume good intent until proven otherwise. Now, in everyday life, caution is important, of course. You want to protect yourself. You want to protect your family. But when you approach every situation with suspicion, it can lead to isolation, and I'm speaking from experience. If you approach every situation as if somebody's out to get you, whether it's dealing with a salesperson, of course they're going to use sales tactics, but if you make it a personable experience, you can still use sales strategies to try and negotiate while still being a good, positive person. If you don't, you're just going to walk out of that experience feeling drained and with an even more negative mindset than you began with. And if you assume somebody's out to get you, you're going to miss out on opportunities. If you just learn what the filters are that you should be using to assess if somebody's trying to scam you, and if you're able to vet out any red flags, then it's okay to let your guard down from time to time and let somebody in and have positive exchanges and open the kimono, so to speak. Just be transparent, be honest about what you're doing in the hobby. They're not going to go and buy a card and try to sell it to you for 3 times the price. And I mean, you think about that happening probably a million times more often than it actually happens. And most importantly, however you look at it, all of that over cautiousness is just going to add unnecessary stress on your body and your mind. Assuming the worst makes it harder to build trust and form genuine connections with others. If the only people that you can have those genuine connections with are people that you've never done some kind of hobby transaction or hobby deal with, you are over compartmentalizing your hobby experience. Because when you give people the benefit of the doubt and you work with them, you deal with them, it leads to stronger relationships, fewer conflicts, and some of those conflicts can even come from being overly skeptical. You could actually rub somebody the wrong way. Now, this doesn't apply necessarily to payment methods, for instance. I talked about, or I forget which rule it was, but I talked about using goods and services unless you actually know the person. And I stand by that. You know, if somebody is trying to work a deal with you and you've never met them before, or it's your first time dealing with them, you should certainly protect yourselves. You can do it in a compassionate way and just say, look, I think that you have great taste in cards. I'm really excited to get to know you. I really appreciate you reaching out because I look forward to getting this card. Since we haven't dealt with each other before, I always use goods and services payment methods in these kind of situations. So I hope that's okay. If it's not, then, no sweat. Like, I'd really love the card, but I have to honor the boundaries and rules I've set for myself. I mean, that's a really long-winded way to talk to somebody, and I'm sure you can't imagine texting that or sending that over Instagram messages or whatever, but why not? Why not go the extra mile to just show somebody that you're genuine and you truly want to develop a relationship? Now, circling back to the fact that not everybody is out to take advantage of you. This is just a form of applying optimism in card collecting and in daily life. While some caution is necessary, you can approach that deal with optimism and fairness. And whether there is an opportunity for hostility to develop or not, at least you're fostering a positive environment. And assuming that people intend well until proven otherwise opens the door for smooth negotiations. People are more open to deal with somebody that's easygoing and kind. And frankly, for me, those exchanges end up being way more enjoyable. So if you have trust in the community, most collectors, vendors, traders, they're passionate about the hobby just like you, and they want to share that enthusiasm. They're not out to deceive people. So assuming the best in people creates an atmosphere of goodwill, and then that benefits everyone in the hobby. It's an energy. It gets passed on, not just to you and your trade partner, but to the people that you deal with and that they deal with thereafter. There are scams. There are shady deals. These are always possibilities. When you assume good intent, it at least allows you to enjoy the hobby without constantly worrying about being taken advantage of. And when you approach others with trust, they're more likely to return that same trust. So you got to strike that balance between caution and optimism. Be aware, but not jaded. Don't let past negative experiences cloud your judgment for future interactions. So I'll share an example of when I've dealt with scammers, and I did something that a lot of people tend to think is funny or might be like an instinct to sort of toy around with them. So anyways, I got reached out to by a very obvious scammer, and my immediate reaction was to play along and sort of manipulate them, like say, here, show me pictures of the card, and draw a picture of a giraffe behind the card. And of course there's some scammer somewhere halfway across the world using Photoshop to fiddle around, and I almost got joy out of sort of wasting their time. But at the end of the experience, how could I actually develop myself out of that? How could I gain optimism or gain positive feelings out of that? Well, I couldn't. It was really sort of this cynical, deprived, I can't think of the right word, so I actually looked it up on Google, and it's, no matter how I looked it up, no matter what search terms I looked for, it came up with this weird German word. It's called Schadenfreude, and it's the joy of pleasure, self-satisfaction that comes from seeing the troubles and failures of another. And even if that other is a scammer, a criminal, it's still, that's an impulse, that feeling that you get, that you find joy in justice, I guess. That's the way you might want to phrase it, is that I find joy that they're being prosecuted for something they did that was awful. But when it comes to sort of toying or manipulating somebody that's trying to take advantage of you, you're not doing anything good into the world. All you're doing is harming somebody and embodying that negative energy. It's almost like those YouTube videos where people play around with scammers or find out where call centers are and threaten them and make them do silly things. It's like, okay, it's one thing if you're intentionally trying to track down their coordinates and report them to the authorities, but it's another thing to actually find joy in them being hurt or harmed or whatever. It's such a natural feeling, but I caution you, because you will come out of the experience not feeling great. So I've had other experiences, obviously, that involve scammers, and you might say, well, how do you handle those? Well, it's simple. As the moment I find out that somebody's a scammer, I block them. The conversation is over. If it's part of some online community, I report them to the moderators, the administrators. If it's something I'm concerned about for the well-being of the group or the public, whatever, I'll make a post saying, here's a screenshot, the person's name and picture. They tried to scam me, so beware. But other than that, move on. There's no sense in finding joy in somebody else's misfortune. So here are some practical steps on how to assume the best in people, specifically in collecting. First, start with optimism. Give people the benefit of the doubt unless you have a reason not to. 2, trust your gut. Don't let fear of being scammed prevent you from enjoying the hobby. 3, be transparent in your deals. Honesty encourages trust. Trust leads to positive experiences. 4, if you do encounter a bad deal, learn from it, but don't let it define how you interact with others in the future. There are a lot of benefits of optimism in building stronger hobby communities. So assuming the best in others creates this welcoming environment for new and experienced collectors alike, so that they can share their cards and not be afraid that somebody's going to put them down. So they can post a card for sale and not be worried that somebody's going to make fun of the price. It's one thing to be pointing out saying, hey, comps seem to be around here, you're asking twice as much. Doesn't seem quite in the right ballpark to me. That seems like a very reasonable response. Whereas, hey, you're trying to rip people off, blah, 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 a bunch of negative energy, that's not super helpful. You know what else is not super helpful? Being condescending. Oh, you only want that much? Oh, I bought one last week for half that price, but I would have thought it quadrupled by now. Like, there's no sense spewing arrogance like that. And I know that in my own Facebook group, Golf Cards and Memorabilia, we do have at least one administrator that can be a bit rough around the edges, a little bit unforgiving. And if that's something that you encounter, don't let it bring you down. That's okay to work with people like that. That's okay to have those kinds of people around. And if you find yourself being affected by it, then set boundaries or seek support on how to manage it and move on. Positivity, fairness, these things breed stronger relationships, helping to build a community of collectors who support one another rather than tearing each other down. Because in the end, enjoying the hobby is about our shared passion, our enthusiasm about the cards. And assuming the best in others allows that passion to flourish. So I'll leave you with this. Approach with optimism and enjoy the ride. Most people in the hobby are just like you. They love the cards, the players, the sports, the stories. And by assuming the best in others, you can build meaningful connections, enjoy your collection, and create positive experiences. And that's a wrap on the 12 rules for hobby. It was a lot of work for me, a lot of different recording sessions, a lot of effort preparing notes for this. If you enjoyed the series, I would really appreciate hearing back, because if I were to do these kinds of series again in the future, I just want to know if it's providing value and if there's anything that I should do differently, just so that I don't waste my effort in going in any particular direction, thinking that it's the right thing to do, when you guys might be looking for something else. So hit me up at the Golf Card Collector on Instagram, Mike Lakusta on Facebook, Golf Cards and Memorabilia on Facebook, and I look forward to hearing from you. I enjoyed it. I'm not going to see you tomorrow, but I will see you within the next 1 or 2 weeks with the next episode of Fondling Cardboard. Thanks, and I'll see you then.
Ridiculous, golf card collector.